Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conference after results of the third quarter of 2015, which will be presented by Mr. Andrzej Skolmowski, Vice President of Grupa Azoty, Mrs. Anna Gol, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Accountant of Grupa Azoty Puławy, Mr. Wojciech Naruć, Vice President of Grupa Azoty Police, and Mr. Dariusz Bednosz, Vice President of Grupa Azoty Kędzierzyn. I would like to also welcome everybody who are watching us live, also on the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We are aware of the fact that some people are participating at another conference, which is also of major importance for investors. That's why we are more than happy that you have appeared on our conference to see the results after the third quarter of 2015. In third quarter, we reported revenue at 2.4 billion PLN with 223 million PLN in EBITDA and 82 million in net profit. What is important, I would like to stress something that happened in the group in the third quarter, is that we exceeded EBITDA of 1 billion PLN after 9 months of this year, with revenue at 7.5 billion. Net profit year to date reached 540 million PLN. This result was driven primarily by the fact that the third quarter is the quarter when the group does not make a lot of profit. The third quarter is not our best period of the year, although the group can take pride in terms of the agro segment. However, higher production and higher sales of nitrogen and compound fertilizers were the main drivers of our good result, and also our favorable results and cooperation with the market. Our good cooperation with our end customers and growers are of major importance for us, and we have been building those good relations in the agricultural sector for years. And this brings tangible effects in terms of our financials. The price trends are also positive drivers of our results in the third quarter. In the third quarter, a decline in the prices of energy feedstock and energy carriers, especially in terms of coal, and also diversification of our gas supplies. Additionally, we have been beneficiaries of the new price policy announced by PGNiG, the Polish oil and gas company. A better spread between polyamide and benzene was also another driver of our good financials in the plastics segment. Although both in the plastics and in the oxo alcohols business, our position is still not very favorable. We have also driven the Azoty Pro Operational Excellence program, which allows us to share our experience and our knowledge throughout the entire group. In addition to pure financials, the third quarter of 2015 was also ripe in additional important events, especially implementation of strategic investment projects. And on a number of occasions, we have announced those projects officially and ceremonially. A new fertilizer complex at Puławy, among other, and also the 10-year anniversary of Police and Puławy on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. Additionally, we improved cooperation with our end customers, that is the agriculture sector, by organizing the 5th Science Business Agriculture Conference at Puławy with an impressive turnout of agriculture producers, fertilizer producers, and representatives of the scientific circles, and also representatives of certain support services such as transport and logistics business. By implementing the clean coal technology project, we have also entered into partnership with the HGH, University of Science and Technology. We are also actively participating and working in this area in the European dimension by discussing and presenting our standpoint and our opinion on the recommendation of the European Parliament on the transatlantic trade and investment partnership between Europe and the United States of America. The pipeline of our strategic investment projects includes 68 investment projects worth in total PLN 7 billion. At Police, these projects include propylene production plant, which is currently in an organizational phase. Mr. Naruch will give you more details later. We are also upgrading the ammonia unit at Police, which will be brought on stream by 2016, and flue gas purification unit with a budget of 164 million PLN, which will be also brought on stream by 2016. At Puławy, the Puławy power plant project has been launched. We have already established a company to implement that project. Work is underway to organize a tender to sign contract with the general contractor. We are also extending the nitric acid unit with a budget of PLN 700 million, including the construction of a new line and a thorough upgrade of 4 existing lines. And last but not least, the nitrate mechanical granulation plant, including 2 lines. The first line will be built by 2018, and the second line will be brought on stream by 2020. At Kędzierzyn, it is clear, and no specialists and no special meetings need to be held to present the current stage of work on the combined heater power plant. It is clear that this project is well underway, and also we are driving home the new urea ammonia nitrate production unit with a budget of 30 million PLN. At Tarnów, we have held a groundbreaking ceremony for the new polyamide plant with a budget of 320 million, and also another project, the mineral fertilizer granulation plant, with a budget of 140 million. As far as the key company developments and highlights that need to be discussed further on, first of all, we would like to discuss the 2 ceremonies. First of all, the groundbreaking ceremony for polyamide 6 and the mechanical fertilization fertilizer granulation plant. I would also like to add that Grupa Azoty was chosen the best investor of 2015 at the Tarnów Investment Forum. I would like to now give the floor over to Mrs. Anna Goll, to tell you more about the situation at Puławy. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. In addition to what Mr. Andrzej Skolmowski has mentioned about Puławy, I would like to also add that in the third quarter of 2015, we have brought on stream a new installation for the production of solid fertilizers based on urea and ammonia sulfate, the so-called Program S, with the production capacity of 16,000 tons. I would like to also stress that we are delivering higher diversification of gas used for the production of our basic products. In the third quarter of 2015, we have achieved more than 60% of gas supplies from outside of the national gas supply system. We have established a competence center, and we're driving the cooperation between science, agriculture, and business. We have published a report entitled Poland as an attractive producer and supplier of food. At Police, Mr. Wojciech Naruć will give you certain more details. As far as Police is concerned, I would like to point out that despite the traditionally difficult period of the year, we have reported better results in comparison with the third quarter of the previous year and in comparison with the year-to-date results of the previous years, both in terms of net profit, EBITDA, and revenue, as well as all profitability ratios, including the return on capital employed ratio, which is one of the key ratios. I will give you some more details later on. Right now, I'd like to only point out that we established a PDH company, which is a special purpose vehicle set up to construct a new propylene production plant. This project is well underway, both in terms of the technical documentation, employment, and negotiations with advisors who are necessary to drive this project home, and also in terms of negotiations on a more business level, both with potential suppliers, vendors, and customers for propane. We are also discussing how to present this project with the view of securing financing sources. Thank you very much. And last but not least, in his debut at conferences with analysts, Mr. Dariusz Bednosz, formerly a financial controller at the OXO Alcohols unit, later director of fertilizers unit, a person responsible for the integration with Siarkopol within the group, and right now a vice president of Grupa Azoty Kędzierzyn. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. In the third quarter, Grupa Azoty Kędzierzyn was appreciated by the market and by our business partners. We have been awarded in the 14th edition of the heavy industry award, and we have also been awarded the Polish chemicals industry diamond. Just as other companies in the group, we are focused on innovations. Another award was granted at the 13th conference of the Oil, Gas and Chemistry Conference for non-phthalate plasticizer, which was developed in cooperation with our specialists at Kędzierzyn and of the Institute at Blachownia. What is also important, we have transferred the technology of the fertilizer granulation to Grupa Azoty Puławy, which will be the second such technology in Puławy. Based on this technology, we will be able to produce calcium ammonium nitrate and ammonium nitrate as well. Thank you very much. As far as our market standing is concerned, we are maintaining a strong and solid position in the market. 90% of our revenue is generated in the United Union. The Polish market went up by 2%, but you have to remember that this is a purely seasonal increase, which should flatten out as the year goes by. As far as the external factors and price factors are concerned, based on the analysis on our analysis and your analysis of the price trends, we can say that all prices that we are analyzing have been on the downward trend. The DAP, the ammonium phosphate, and ammonia, as well as urea, respectively, by 10%, 21%, and 17%. The same applies to caprolactam and polyamide 6, down by 14% and 70%, respectively, which was driven mainly by declining prices of benzene at minus 35%. As far as imports to the European Union is concerned, it remained relatively flat. As far as our market outlook for the fourth quarter of 2015 is concerned, I believe that our market prospects should be focusing on a further cooperation with the market and maintaining price trends, especially in fertilizers. Near the end of the second quarter and in the third quarter, we reached the lowest price level, which should drive the demand for fertilizers in the last quarter of the year. In addition, we must remember that in the fourth quarter, farmers will be granted direct subsidy payments, which gives hope of higher fertilizer demand as well. Urea prices should be on the growth path. On the other hand, the diammonium phosphate prices should be affected by weak demand. Still, we do hope that the low stocks of DAP in China should improve the situation. As far as plastics are concerned, after major price fluctuations in plastics related to feedstock prices, we are observing high seasonal pressures, which are characteristic and typical of the fourth quarter. We must also remember that the fourth quarter is traditionally a period of seasonal stock optimization. However, if we analyze the demand at our end customers, we expect the demand to grow, particularly in automotive and textile segments. As in chemicals, we are observing a rather cautious procurement policy of our customers, especially due to declining raw material prices, both for oxo alcohols and plasticizers, in the first, respectively, in terms of benzene and propylene, which is always related to the situation in oil and petroleum product market. We will observe a further decline in the price of alcohols and plasticizers, which will follow the downward trend of propylene prices. In terms of melamine, we believe that the price of melamine will be comparable to the third quarter. And traditionally, the fourth quarter will see a traditional decline in titanium white prices due to optimization of stocks at the end of the year. The average monthly price of gas will be at 19 euro, which is down year on year. However, we are still waiting for the impact of the overall economic situation as well as weather conditions. Not to mention a potential oversupply of gas in our neighboring markets. We are also expecting lower prices of ammonia as well as sulfur, and in general a correction or adjustment of the prices of coal, because the level of $55, $57 per ton should be adjusted. And I have already mentioned that the feedstocks used for the production of titanium white will be on a downward price trend, especially in terms of titanium slag and also ilmenite to a lower extent. A couple of words about the diversification of gas sources and gas in general. Diversification of gas sources is a very important matter across the entire group. This graph shown on a slide presents the development of the situation. We are very proud of our achievements to date. However, after the new PGNiG policy implemented in terms of prices and tariffs, we need to remember that if the price of gas for a customer like us, Grupa Azoty, is going to be similar to market prices, then this is something we need to take into consideration. We must increase the amounts of gas from other sources. It is very important for us to determine how much gas we buy and at what prices. The prices we are showing here are not taken out of the blue. This graph shows you that we have achieved a lot in order to get closer to the best price level, which is the TTFDA, Title Transfer Facility day-ahead prices. And we want to show you the discrepancy of our prices versus that price level. We need to also remember that the tariff must be well adapted to the needs of the Polish chemical sector. Maybe it seems that we are stressing too much, our achievements too much in terms of gas diversification prices, but I need to stress one more time that we have achieved 60% of gas diversification sources in the third quarter of 2014, and we are be focusing on repeating that achievement this year. As far as our key financials are concerned, our revenue at 2.4 billion PLN. If we compare it to the third quarter of the previous year, our sales went up. In terms of EBITDA and profitability of EBITDA, it is noticeable in the third quarter, but we need to remind you one more time, the third quarter is traditionally a quarter when we perform maintenance and repair works, especially in oxo alcohols and plastics segments, which are of key importance for our results. What is also important in our nitrogen fertilizers, which have a major contribution on our results, the result in those segments were solid. The net result at 82 million PLN in the third quarter, compared to the previous year, we have recorded a major increase. And in the 9 months of the year 2005, 540 million PLN. 695 million in EBITDA in the previous year. This result was improved by the sales volume of 342 million PLN and also by lower costs of sales at 198 million PLN. On the other hand, selling prices, which had a direct negative impact on both our revenue and profit margins, had a major negative contribution of 89 million PLN. Selling and distribution expenses also reduced our EBITDA. The EBITDA after 9 months of 2015 was driven mainly by the agro and fertilizer segment at 61%. However, we are also happy with a modestly good result of other segments. Those results were driven obviously by the third quarter, which is always negative. In terms of the chemicals segment, it was at 22%, and in terms of the power and energy segment and other activities, they remained flat year on year. Fertilizers were the segment that contributed mainly to our EBITDA and revenue. We should now go through individual segments, starting with the agro and fertilizers segment. 4.5 billion in segment revenue from January to September 2015 were driven by an ambitious volume target and also an increase in the sales of compound fertilizers by 30%. In terms of nitrogen fertilizers and ammonia, the increase was at 3% year on year. Our EBITDA in the fertilizers segment reached 57%. The increase in EBITDA was 57%. In terms of volumes for compound fertilizers and also nitrogen fertilizers and ammonia, they remained more or less flat year-on-year, with a slight increase in the production volumes of compound fertilizers. In plastics, we reported a 13% decline in segment revenue, which dropped below 1 billion. The result in segment revenue is broken down in the table into polyamide and caprolactam. Especially in caprolactam, we recorded a 28% decline. However, our EBITDA went up by 147%, which makes us very happy. In terms of volumes, we reported higher volumes in polyamide, which was offset by a decline in the volumes of caprolactam. The prices of benzene, phenol, caprolactam, and polyamide 6 are shown below, and the price trends can be clearly observed. In terms of chemicals, we reported a decline in segment revenue year-on-year, which was especially driven by OXO products, down 36%. Urea for technical applications, the technical grade urea, went up by 3%, with melamine going up by 7%, but this was offset by a decline in segment revenue from titanium, from the sales of titanium white. At the same time, our EBITDA went up by 2%. However, you should also focus on the prices of propylene, with a major decline, with a negative impact on our OXO products. In terms of our financial position, and a statement of financial position is shown on the next slide. Our reported EBITDA is 0.4. And our cost structure. Our cost went down by 1.8%, which was driven mainly by declining prices of consumed energy materials and a major drop in petroleum product prices, as well as energy carriers, especially natural gas and coal, with a concurrent increase in production volumes, which went up considerably, both production and sales volumes. Lower depreciation has also reduced our costs, which was, among other things, related to an impairment loss on the phthalic anhydride unit. At the same time, we reported higher costs of services, especially in terms of transport costs, and unfortunately, our costs increased because of higher labor costs. I will give now the floor over to Mrs. Anna Gol, who will discuss the financials at Puławy. As far as the financials and financial performance of Grupa Puławy in third quarter is concerned, as we have mentioned before, the third quarter is always a quarter when we perform most of our maintenance and repair works, where a number of our main and key production facilities are brought off-stream to perform maintenance work. Despite those considerations, we have reported good financials in the third quarter. Our net profit was driven especially by high revenue at 933 million PLN. Our EBITDA is at 118 million PLN, which was much higher than in the third quarter of the last year. In 2015, our revenue was reported at 2.9 million. We need to focus on the key drivers of Puławy's EBITDA included sales volumes and raw materials prices, which was offset and adjusted by lower selling prices of our products. However, our raw material prices, adjusted by additional costs, which was related to higher sales volumes, they have driven our EBITDA to 490 million PLN. Our other costs were related to general administrative expenses as well as selling and distribution expenses. As far as our performance by segment is concerned, the major segment which contributes the most to our revenue and to our EBITDA is the agro segment, with the revenue of 629 million PLN, which were up year on year. And the same can be said about the revenue in this segment after 9 months of 2015. As far as chemicals are concerned, the contribution of the chemical segment to our revenue is 28%. Unfortunately, our performance in the chemical segment is down year on year. As far as our other segment of activities are concerned, their contribution is much lower. In terms of our EBITDA, we reported higher EBITDA across all segments, both in the third quarter and after 9 months of the year, compared with our performance in the previous year. In terms of the agro segment, nitrogen fertilizers was the area where we reported high increase, especially in terms of the sales of urea, ammonium nitrate, as well as calcium ammonium nitrate. In terms of phosphate and compound fertilizers, we reported higher revenue from sales of nearly 40%, which was especially driven by the higher volumes of Ammofoska. Other goods and services, we reported lower revenue at -27%. Our profitability is higher than in the previous year at almost 25%. In the chemicals segment, both in the third quarter and after 9 months of the year, we reported lower sales volumes and sales prices for caprolactam. However, our performance in terms of revenue from sales of melamine was much better. We sold a much higher volumes of melamine, and the prices of melamine in the third quarter were much better year on year. Our profitability in the chemicals segment is positive, and it is higher year on year, currently at more than 10%. As far as our financial position is concerned, it is stable. Our assets are going up year after year, which is driven mainly by our investment projects. Our activities are financed by our own funds to a large extent, which drives our debt ratios down. The structure of our costs has changed compared with the last year. If we compare the costs of 2015, it has dropped slightly by 1%, mainly owing to a considerable decline in the cost of consumption of materials and feedstocks, especially benzene and gas, as well as by higher labor costs, which was the increase in labor costs was reported in 2014. However, certain employee benefits were not paid in 2015. Therefore, labor costs had a positive impact on our cost structure. At Police, we reported 600 million in revenue, which increased year on year. Our EBITDA was at 39 million, also going up year on year, and our net profit was at 15 million, going up by 9 million, which is 2.5 times more than in the third quarter of 2014. After 9 months of the year, we exceeded 2 billion in revenue, the increase in terms of EBITDA was at 217 million, with an almost 11% EBITDA margin, and we reported an increase of 122 million in net profit, which is up by nearly 6% year on year. Our key drivers, our key performance drivers, if we compare EBITDA after the 9 months of 2014 to this year's EBITDA after 9 months, we see a positive contribution of our sales volumes, especially in terms of compound fertilizers. And another driver was increased production and increased prices, especially in terms of compound fertilizers, including ammonia and urea. As far as the negative trends and contributions are concerned, first of all, we need to mention the costs and volumes of raw materials used for production, especially in terms of the production of compound fertilizers. This results directly from higher production volumes and higher sales. So it is difficult to specify the negative impact of that performance driver. In terms of performance by segment, fertilizers have a major contribution in terms of both EBITDA and revenue. Our revenue in fertilizers is at 1.7 billion PLN, which is up 20% compared with the third quarter of the previous year. In terms of pigments, we reported revenue at 213 million, which is slightly worse than in the previous year. And we will discuss the reasons for our lower performance in pigments later. And the same can be said about other revenue. But we can still be happy that our EBITDA went up across all those areas in all segments. In terms of fertilizers, we can see an increase of 31% in terms of revenue from sales of compound fertilizers. But we need to also remember that the prices shown in the lower part of this slide had a major impact on our performance. In terms of urea, it went down by 8%. In ammonia, we reported an increase of 5%. In the fertilizers segment, our EBITDA reached 206 million, which represented a major increase of 117%. In pigments, our revenue reached 213 million PLN, which was driven mainly by titanium white, which is the major product produced in this segment. So any decline in titanium white has a major increase on the revenue across this segment. Our EBITDA margin is still positive, and the same can be said about EBITDA. A couple of words about our situation and performance in the pigments segment. Our lower results, lower EBIT, is driven still by an oversupply of titanium white on the market. There is more titanium white available on the market than needed. Obviously, this situation is offset in terms of the prices by both titanium slag and ilmenite. However, we need to also remember that the decline in titanium white prices is much higher compared to other elements which are drivers of our performance in this segment. This all have driven our EBITDA down 82% in comparison with the third quarter of the previous year. As far as our financial position is concerned, just as in other companies of the group, our situation is still stable. Our profitability ratio and liquidity ratios are either higher or flat. And also our debt ratios remained at a very secure level. Our net debt has increased due to new long-term loans incurred, which was necessary to implement new investment projects. We also needed more financial resources to establish and capitalize our new special purpose vehicle, PDH Polska. And maybe a couple of words about our equity, which was up by 8%. This also includes a payment of dividend to all our shareholders for the previous year. In terms of our cost structures, we reported an increase of more than 12%, which was mainly driven by higher consumption of materials and energy due to higher volume of production and sales, especially in terms of compound fertilizers and variable prices in this area, and also urea and ammonia at around 1%. Another major position which contributed to a higher cost are lower gas consumption and higher costs of services, which resulted mainly from different structure of our transport costs. In the previous year, it represented 75%. This year, it reached more than 90%. Therefore, a change in our strategy in terms of costs of transport, also had a major impact on our cost structure in general. Mr. Dariusz Bednosz will discuss the key financials and performance at Kędzierzyn. In the third quarter, Kędzierzyn reported 435 million PLN in revenue, 35 million in EBITDA, and a higher EBITDA margin year on year. Our net profit reached 14 million PLN. After 9 months, we reported almost 1.4 billion PLN in revenue. Our EBITDA after 9 months is at 156 million, and our net profit is at 87 million, which is higher than in the third quarter of the previous year. Our financial position at ZAK is very stable. All management ratios, including profitability and liquidity ratios, are higher or flat. And if we look at our debt ratios, we can see that our net debt reached 33 million PLN. As far as our performance by segment is concerned, our situation is comparable to other group companies. Our EBIT is driven mainly by the fertilizers segment. After 9 months, our fertilizers segment reported 144 million PLN in EBITDA and 756 million PLN in revenue. In terms of OXO alcohols, we reported EBITDA at minus 13 million, unfortunately, and we reported revenue at 529. In terms of our revenue structure, fertilizers represent 59%, OXO alcohols represent 34%, which was driven by the situation on the market. As we have mentioned, there is a major oversupply combined with a decline in prices of plasticizers, which in turn drives the prices of OXO alcohols and plasticizers sold to customers. If you compare the prices of propylene year on year, there was a major drop in those prices, and the same for OXO alcohols. This proves that a decline in OXO alcohols precedes a decline in the prices of propylene, but it also stresses that we are facing a major competition from other producers, especially from Russia and Korea. We have presented our financial results across the group, including the 4 major companies in the Grupa Azoty Group, representing 93% of our sales. It was a solid performance in terms of the third quarter, especially with regard to EBITDA, which provides a good starting point to remain competitive and strong in the months to come on the market.